Hello, we have another OSDT match here today, this time for round 6, and it's for the 4-1 bracket, Actuarily versus Tenzai, with Actuarily bringing a stack of Crest team with Actuarily's signature Gapdos, and Tenzai bringing a team of 6 that Actuarily is very familiar with in his reign. Both players getting low on time here at the leads, which is usually not what happens because usually you wait until you've decided on your leads to put on timer if you're going to do it there. But now we have Gapdos and Rillaboom against Polytoad and Kingdra, the rain lead. So there's definitely the option of swapping out Polytoad to Serena here to block a Fake Out or Grassy Glide from the Rillaboom, and then the potential to go for a Hydro Pump into Zapdos, which would KO, but there is very much the option for Actuarily to switch out Zapdos here to Volcanion or possibly Cube, but more likely Volcanion. The Rillaboom, if it has Wood Hammer, could also knock out the Kingdra here. But actually, we see the Helping Hand Hurricane knock out the Rillaboom, and Zapdos stays in to go for the U-turn into Politoed, which means the Politoed will now switch out, but the Zapdos will be stuck in. And Tenzai opts to go to Urshifu, which does match well into everything remaining on Actuarily's team, with the one threat to the Zapdos being presumably locked into U-turn, but also vulnerable to Hurricane by Kingdra here as well. Actuarily taking his time deciding what to go out to here. It is a tough spot because of how this Zapdos is basically a non-threat on this following turn. The Rillaboom was also very big for Actuarily, being one of several water type resists, but probably the best one against Kingdra typically. And also the only fake out support to help set Trick Room. So now it's going to be a harder time doing that. And he does go to Cresselia. Tenzai could very well up to double into the Cresselia here. And either knock it out or deal a large amount of damage. The Zapdos could stay in to risk going for a U-turn, but that doesn't seem significant enough to risk taking a Hurricane as opposed to just switching out to something else. Assuming it is choice locked, which it normally is. Tenzai is the one taking time here, though. And Kingdra does opt for the Hurricane into the Gapdos slot, which switches out, predictably. And Urshifa goes for the U-turn into Cresselia. So most likely Actuarily has gotten up Trick Room here for a pretty low price, given how that previous turn looked, where Tenzai was exerting a lot of pressure at first. Tenzai switches out to Politoed. Now this Staka is in a threatening position here, notably because this is Choice Specs Kingdra, so it's locked into Hurricane, so you only need to worry about the Politoed here. And I don't know if you'd be able to get a knockout here, actually. Whether you can or not does change the situation. Kingdra is highly likely to switch out to most likely Firethorn here, though. And Volcanion is a very possible switch from Actuarily's end here. Both players using up their time on this turn. Both below 2 minutes now. Tenzai goes for the safe play of protecting and switching to Ferrothorn to help stall Trick Room, as Actually doubles into Politoed, so no damage done that turn. And now the Ferrothorn is in a very good position here. And again, Volcanion is looking like a very good switch option for Actually, but he again doesn't go for it and instead doubles into the Politoed slot again, presumably. Yeah. And picks up the knockout on Sarina, which with a Rillaboom dead is much more expendable. The knockoff into Cresselia means that's pretty low now, so as long as you're able to cover Stack Attack with your water types, which you should be able to on Rain quite easily, then Tenzai has a good chance of stopping another Trick Room going up, but there is still some potential for that to happen somehow, such as from a double Trick Room to remove and reset it. Body Press goes into the Ferrothorn as Steel Roller knocks out Cresselia, and Urshifu knocks out Stack Attack there. Where I imagine Actually went for the Psychic into Urshifu there, which would have knocked it out before it moved, but Ferrothorn got the knockout on it first, with it quite comfortably living the attack from Stack Attack there. Now Kyurem and Volcanion have came out. This is looking very rough for Actually here. Bar some sort of insane misses or something. It's hard to see him winning this. And the Ferrothorn is knocked out, but in return so is the Gapdos. So Actually down to 2 Pokemon against 4 here. I would imagine you just go Polytoad and Helping Hand close combat cube here and should basically be GG. It does have the Chapel Berry, which does allow it to live and go for a Dragon Dance, though, while Urshifu is knocked out by Steam Eruption. Kingdra comes out. Goes for the Hurricane into the Kyurem, while Volcanion goes for Steam Eruption, and Politoed goes for Toxic into Volcanion. So yeah, with the Kingdra still outspeeding the Kyurem here, and the Volcanion not really able to take it down too quickly, this Kingdra will take down the Kyurem here, and then it'll be over. And Tenzai takes game one. And game two has started. Actually, with another Gapdos team, again with a Trick Room Sour, but just a one this time in Porygon 2. And Tenzai has a Thunderous team. Dragapult looks very strong in this matchup, assuming it isn't Scarf or Shifu or T-Wave Thunderous. Outspeeding everything on Tenzai's team here, and able to hit them all pretty hard. And again, Actuarily has turned on the timer before he himself has chosen his lead, so both players are ticking down on time. Actuarily leads Dragapult Rillaboom into Thunderous Rillaboom, and Tenzai's Rillaboom is revealed faster from Grassy Surge. So with the faster Rillaboom, Tenzai could fake out Actuarily's Rillaboom and get a free move with Thunderous here, which if it is Thunderwave into the Dragapult would be very big. Actuarily instead switches out the Volcanion, which does cover the knockoff which Rillaboom goes for, while his own Rillaboom U-turns out. And now he's in a very good position here, with the Volcanion out against 2 Fire Weeks and the U-turn into whatever he wants here. Could very well be Dragapult coming out again. But instead it's Zapdos. Perhaps fearing an Ice Punch and knockoff double into Dragapult. Heat Wave and something is the obvious move from Actuarily here. From Tenzai's point of view, to try and play around that. Heatron's certainly one option to try and switch in here. Or potentially Thundurus or Naganado. But you can't really cover every possibility with any of those switches. Heatron's very susceptible to Steam Eruption, which could very well happen, predicting the obvious switch. Volcanion actually goes for the Protect, presumably fearing a Toxic from Metagross. Or a double from Rillaboom and Metagross there. And the Zapdos U-turns out, which was definitely the option that covered any of the switches best by it there. And now Porygon 2 comes out against the Thundurus. But will it be taunted, is the question. Volcanion switches out to Rillaboom, covering the Thunderbolt. And Metagross Toxics the Porygon 2, which straight up attacks the Thundurus, presumably to cover a taunt there as opposed to setting Trick Room, but also just getting it out of the way in case there was any Thunder Wave possibilities or taunt possibilities in general to be annoying. And this turn, Actuarily is looking very, very safe to set Trick Room here with Fake Out pressure and the full health Porygon 2. Even if it is toxic, that's not really factoring in this turn. And once he sets Trick Room, then he can most likely go to town and do a lot of damage to Tenzai's team here. Tenzai protects the Heatran. And Stomping Tantrums the Rillaboom? I don't know what that was. Like, the Rillaboom is basically always going to fake out there so you can get Trick Room up. Always going to fake out there. Like, fake out Heatran and then both your Pokemon should be safe from Metagross KOing them. So I don't know what that Stomping Tantrum was trying to cover. The Protect was presumably to cover the possibility of high horsepower, but again, you know, Well, I guess if it's going for the fake out, you're fine. You're just scouting for the possibility there, but it could also be that it's horsepower but it's slow, so it wouldn't have went for it there, but it would now. Oh, and a very big KO into the Volcanion there. Good earth power by Tenzai into the Rillaboom slot there as it U-turned out. And now Actuarily's own Metagross comes in. And Toxic is starting to rack up on the Porygon 2 here, so it might be looking to switch out this turn or next. And the Heatran protects. Stomping Tantrum looks like it could be a roll to KO here. Thunderbolt also onto Metagross also looks like that was a roll as well. As in, it will be a roll this turn given the previous turn's damage. But again, the toxic damage on the Porygon 2 is racking up here, so it looks difficult for it to maintain enough health to be able to set a second Trick Room here. I do think that it probably would have been better on that last turn to just switch out the Porygon 2 and save it for later there. I don't think you desperately needed that Thunderbolt damage so much. I think you just wanted to save it. Hammer Arm covers the Heatran doing anything. And then your Porygon 2 is just healthy for later to set Trick Room again and then hopefully win after that. So because it's so low, the Porygon 2 decides just to stay in again and use Thunderbolt to knock out the Metagross, which was possibly a roll, and Metagross uses Hammer Arm, which the Heatran switches into Urshifu. Trick Room is nearly over, but one thing to note is that if it's Scarf Gyarados, which it presumably is, and I don't know if it probably was revealed if it was or not by the U-turn damage, but that and Dragapult outspeed all of Tenzai's team and could very easily clean it up. So if Actuarily is able to position those to get in after Trick Room ends, that could be his route to victory. And Tenzai couldn't really go Naganadel here to try and set Tailwind as Trick Room ends because it would be threatened. So the Porygon 2, I would imagine you just stay in and sack it here and you get a free switch. Metagross goes for the Hammer Arm into Heatran. Oh, freeze. Going for the Ice Beam, covering the likely switch to Naganadel or Rillaboom there. Assuming that Urshifu didn't protect, which it didn't. But Tenzai actually stayed in and it got frozen, unfortunately. I don't know if Shadow Ball would knock Heatran out here. I don't think it would, but yeah, Gyarados definitely can knock it out from here. And then switching Metagross to Dragapult, and as long as this Urshifu doesn't wake up here, then that should basically be a win with that line, I imagine. The Metagross does decide just to stay in though. Close Combat knocks out Rillaboom. Metagross goes for the Ice Punch, again covering a switch because you don't really need to worry about the frozen Pokemon staying in too much. And now Naganadel comes out, but it will be able to set Tailwind here because of the Gyarados being locked into close combat, which is something that switching at the Metagross to Dragapult or even Rillaboom would have covered. And Actuarily is now regretting his last turn play now for realizing how he struggles here against the Naganadel now that it's came out on the choice locked close combat. I mean, I guess as well, you probably don't want to get knocked out by the Ice Punch plus the close combat, so I guess you may just go for the knockout into Metagross here, and then if you're timid Naganadel for the speed boost, then you're in a good spot. Whereas if you're modest and knock it out, then you'll still be slower than Gyarados and Dragapult. And if you go for Tailwind, then like I said, the double would knock it out, and then Heatran in the back wouldn't be able to take home the win without the Urshifu waking up. And Tenzai does go for the Tailwind, lives with Sash, and actually did not double target it, instead knocking out the Urshifu there. And that may have been because he expected Steel Roller to just knock it out, not considering the possibility of Sash. And it is modest Naganadel, so he couldn't have went for the knockout there to get speed boost, which I also don't know if that would have KO'd with no life orb there anyways. And now, if it's not protect Naganadel, then you just knock that out with Rillaboom and then KO Heatran with Dragapult. If it is protect Naganadel, then I don't think you can afford to go for another play from Actuarily's point of view. So I think if it is protect Naganadel, then Tenzai probably wins from that. Since Heatran would knock out the Rillaboom and then Naganadel would be able to target the Dragapult. Although, if it is protect, then it would be able to protect next turn on the last turn of Tailwind. And then outspeed Naganadel after that. Grassy Glide into the Naganadel does knock it out. Flash Cannon does not knock out Dragapult, so Actually wins. And there will be a game 3. And there we go. Game 3 underway. And now Actually is the one using Rain. but with the Porygon 2 version, as opposed to his original 6, which is what Tenzai used game 1. And Tenzai opts for a semi-room team here, which does have a Volcanion, which is notable in terrain, usually. Oh, this is also actually a Rillaboom version instead of Sarina, which it typically isn't that. Which does mean that Tenzai's own Rillaboom will be better as a result, because Sarina can't switch in to block two of its best moves. Zero or a Rillaboom leads into Politoed Kingdra. And this is the type of situation where you could be looking to switch in Sarina to block some moves here, but that isn't a possibility. But I can't imagine the option of what Tenzai went for in game one of Helping Hand Hurricane to knock out Rillaboom happens here, because you can't block the fake outs or even discourage them. So it's very likely that Tenzai does go for a fake out here with Zero Aura at least. So Kingdra switches out to Ferrothorn and Politoed switches out to Rillaboom. Expected fake out does go into Iron Barbs, and Rillaboom knocks off Politoed slot, which turns into removing the Rillaboom's Assault Vest. And now the Ferrothorn is in a very good spot here, being the Rillaboom revealing that its coverage move is knockoff, which would remove Assault Vest, but Ferrothorn's going to do a lot in return, and Zero Aura as well most likely isn't superpower here. And wait, what am I on about? Yeah, I'm forgetting things here. Yeah, the Ferrothorn is with the Porygon too, so it's most likely Iron Defense. So yeah, that taunt makes sense there. Not being threatened out by it, because an unboosted body press isn't massively threatening, where the Assault Vest with 4 attacks would be there. So the Zapdos does come out, but it can't threaten the Zero Aura slot at least, but is threatening a Hurricane into Rillaboom here. Tenzai does have one Hurricane resist in Metagross, which could very well come out in a Rillaboom slot here, but instead he stays in, goes for the Snarl, and Rillaboom lives, where it would have actually lived even without the Snarl there, and gets the U-turn off into Actuarily's Rillaboom. Tenzai getting low on time, while Actuarily still has most of his. The Porygon 2 comes out. And the Rillaboom uses Wood Hammer, which doesn't knock out the Zero Hour, but does knock out itself. Now Kingdra comes in on the free switch, threatening a KO on the Zero Hour here. We could very well see a Muddy Water and Hurricane into the Zero Hour slot, looking to try and pick up a KO. Although Volcanion could come in and live that. -1, it might even live a Thunder as well, although it's not Life Orb, and if it was Choice Specs, then it wouldn't be able to change move anyways. Tenzai goes for an Ice Beam into the Zapdos slot there. With the Muddy Water crit putting Porygon 2 at half. Tenzai's Porygon 2 did heal first with Grassy Terrain, but there is a strong possibility this is a speed tie if they're both min speed. In which case, Muddy Water and Ice Beam or Thunderbolt could KO Tenzai's Porygon 2 here. If that is a tie and he wins the tie. Despite Volcanion being good into this Kingdra here, it is not choice locked, so it could opt to go for a Draco Meteor here, and Porygon 2 with the special attack vis could also Thunderbolt it, which would also be unpleasant for it. So this is not a great position for Tenzai here. I do wonder if Kingdra could just knock out Porygon 2 with the Hydro Pump or something here, but no, it goes for a Muddy Water, and both Porygon 2s go for Thunderbolt. So now Tenzai's Pokemon here are both almost dead. So Actuarily having 4 Pokemon to Tenzai's 6. Even if these 2 extra ones are quite low in health. Volcanion being low is nice for Therathorn, but it's difficult to tell if Ferrothorn will be able to pull this out by boosting up or not, because of how little rest of his team is left. Especially because right here, if you come out, you are threatened by Heat Wave on that turn if you're trying to Trick Room. And also, if you try to Trick Room, then you're giving Porygon 2 a chance to recover up. So he does go to Zapdos. I would imagine you're targeting the Porygon 2 slot with the Zapdos here, and targeting Volcanion with Porygon 2 here, threatening the double KO. And Zapdos actually just switches out, surprisingly. And so Tenzai's Porygon 2 gets the chance to recover, which is really not good for Actuarily. This Porygon 2 is actually kind of difficult to kill, even with the Ferrothorn. It's not boosted up. So as long as Tenzai can maintain pressure, which he could very well do, especially with the Porygon 2 to control Trick Room, so Ferrothorn isn't moving first, then he could stop it from getting a chance to get going. The Landorus, which came out, is threatened by both Pokemon here under Trick Room, though. Volcanion could come out, but that would risk a Thunderbolt read. And you do probably want to save it around for a Heat Wave on Ferrothorn. Tenzai switches out both Pokemon to Metagross and Rillaboom with no target into the Landorus slot, which also could have protected there. So that makes sense going for the Porygon 2. But the Rillaboom is now burnt, which is not great. This Metagross does have room to do something, whatever that is. Either a toxic or if it's cosmic power, then going for that, and it's in a very good spot. Oh, but a crit burn Scald. It's very annoying for Tensai there. And now it's starting to look like both steel types will be able to boost up defensively here. Predictable switch from Politoed to Zapdos there on the Grassy Glide. And both steel types do go for their boosting move. If it does come down to a 1v1, I do think that the Ferrothorn wins because it has Leech Seed and the Metagross is burnt. Ferrothorn continues to boost up, and Tenzai goes for the Ice Punch instead of another Cosmic Power there. An Ice Punch which could have put that into range of an attack from Zeraora here, but it protected. And will it go for the taunt into Ferrothorn? No, it just fakes out the Zapdos slot, which switched to Politoed. And Zapdos comes out again. Another Cosmic Power, and now Actuarily starts body pressing the Metagross. Zapdos protects on the Snarl. Ferrothorn still unthreatened against these two, really. And Actuarily knocks out the Zeraora. Porygon 2 comes out now. And I would have to imagine that Body Press would be a KO on Porygon 2 here. Porygon 2 is faster and you could threaten KOing the Zapdos, but it could protect. So yeah, he opts to switch out into Landorus, expecting a Body Press, most likely. But actually double targets the Metagross, which is almost dead now. And once that does go down, then full health Porygon 2 is likely to get up Trick Room, and under Trick Room then Ferrothorn takes on Volcanion. But even without that, actually, just being at full health, it can take a Heat Wave in Rain and still win from that. Ferrothorn protects there. So this is a tricky situation with one turn of Rain. You don't really want to go Politoed, but if you go Porygon 2, then does it double into that threaten a KO? I would think it might. He does decide to go into Politoed. Which I also imagine would drop to double target here. Which he does not go for. And now Rain has run out, so if Actuarily wants Rain again, you'd pretty much need to switch out Politoed here and then bring him back out again later, which I'm sure he's considering, but instead he stays out with the Politoed, and Tenzai goes for the substitute here rather than Earth Powering to knock out the Politoed, possibly covering the option of Protect. Actually does double into the Landorus slot, which is now too low to use substitute and would die to any attack. Politoed is also just out of range of body press at the moment. Well, actually, the Ferrothorn used Gyro Ball, it's not Leech Seed. Both players getting low on time. I think this is a big call you need to make here, whether the Politoed is going to protect or not from both ends. Actually getting very low on time here. And the Ferrothorn protects, but the Politoed doesn't. And it knocks out the Landorus while surviving the body press, despite a higher roll than before. Now the Volcanion comes out. And without Rain, a Heat Wave will do a number to this Ferrothorn here. And it also just used Protect, so you couldn't go for the option of protecting Ferrothorn and switching to Porygon and bringing Politoed back out again. At least not without going for a double Protect here. And knocking out Politoed, the Heat Wave is single target and just clean knocks out the Ferrothorn here. And now this just has to be Tenzai's win here, surely. With his own Porygon 2 and other stuff as well. And it is. Tenzai takes game 3 and the set. Even with that crit burn on the Metagross, that turned out to be the more effective steel type in the end. At least being on the winning side, that is. But yeah, that's all for now.